Welcome to the True Man Podcast. This is an invitation to radical reconstruction of a man's masculine heart and soul in a place of safe community where we dare to ask questions deep seated inside a man and explore ways to help you become a better man, a better son, a better dad, and a better spouse. So glad you're here with me today. I'm excited to have you with me. It is April 2026, and you know what that means. First week of month. It's Masters Week. So, of course, I'm going to be glued to the television all week, as I'm sure you are. My azaleas went full blast last week, so I was ahead of Augusta National. I have no idea. They must have the greatest agronomy teams in the world at how they figure out how to get those plants to grow and pop precisely at the time the tournament starts. But this year an extra special month. In fact, over the next 4 weeks, these next four podcasts will be the last that I deliver in the state of Georgia. So next spring, I'm not going to see the azaleas bloom here. My wife and I will be exiting Georgia and moving to Arkansas to get closer to family. And over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to lay out a rather personal journey that I've been on, that we've been on as a family, as we begin to move towards greener pastures. And really, I've been on this journey, as you're about to hear over the next 4 weeks, for about 30 plus years. Ha! Wow. But before I jump into today's podcast and begin setting the stage for that final Georgia podcast 4 weeks from now, I just want to tell you how to get a hold of me. Of course, you can always head on out to truemanlifecoaching.com. That is where we keep everything for now. For now? What do you mean for now? Well, there are big announcements coming in the next few weeks surrounding the American Family Renaissance and what we're going to be doing with that to really grow what was a seed planted in True Man Life Coaching. But enough of that. TrueManLifeCoaching.com. That's where you can find the podcast. That's where you can find all information. It's if you're looking for a speaker online or for an in-person gig, let me know. Reach out to me. You can see what I speak on my speaking page. And my calendar's on there too. So if it's something that you want to talk with me about, you can just get on my calendar and we'll set something up. The next 4 weeks could be kind of dicey, but nonetheless, and it looks like I get fiber at my new house. I'm really excited about that. Those up speeds and down speeds. Wow. So we'll see how that works out. But love hearing from everybody. So you can always reach me by email too at Mike@TrueManLifeCoaching.com. Now, with that, let's dive in here and talk about this is podcast number 234, entitled The Weight You Were Never Meant to Carry. Nobody wants to carry weight that they don't want hanging around. So let me ask you something. Most men never stop long enough to consider, sorry to say, what are you still carrying that you were never meant to carry this long? Now, I'm not talking about responsibility. I'm not talking about providing for your family. I'm not talking about the weight that builds you. I'm talking about the weight that quietly sits beneath the surface. The kind you don't talk about, the kind you've learned to live with, the kind that shows up when everything gets quiet. And that little voice, that little guy sits on your shoulder and starts talking to you. A decision, a mistake, a moment you wish you could go back and handle differently. Those are the types of voices that show up in the quiet, aren't they? Something you buried but never actually dealt with. We live in a world that teaches men two extremes, don't we? Ignore it, or you let it define you. Ignore it, or just move on. Man up. Don't think about it, or let it define you. That's just who I am. I'll never change that. That's my story. Neither one of those works. Ignoring it doesn't remove it. In fact, it just pushes it deeper down in your soul. And it's defining you. And it keeps you stuck in the version of yourself that God never intended you to stay in. So what do most men do? Well, they just carry it around. Just carry it around quietly, silently, heavily. It gets really weighty, doesn't it? And they get really good at functioning while carrying it. They build careers, we build families, we show up, we perform. But underneath it all, there's something there. There's something stirring around. I've carried something for over 30 years, a decision that I made when I was 20 years old, a decision that I knew was right, but it didn't feel like a win. You ever made one of those where you did what you knew you had to do, but it cost you something that you weren't ready to lose? Now, that decision didn't ruin my life, not even by far. It certainly laid some groundwork, but it marked me. It stayed with me, not loud, but present. It would show up in certain moments, in reflection, in quiet, in transition. And if I'm being honest, I never really, maybe fully dealt with it. It was just always there. But I moved on. I built a life. I grew as a man. But that moment really stayed tucked away. And here's what I have learned over time: it's not the event or the events that weigh you down, it's what you attach it to, right? Regret, shame, confusion, what could have been, identity. That's where the real weight comes from. So, two men can go through the exact same experience. One learns from it and grows, and the other carries it for decades. Why? Because of what they attach to it. And here's where it gets dangerous. At some point, you stop carrying the weight. Guess what? The weight starts carrying you. It begins to shape how you see yourself. It influences your decisions. It affects your consequences. It quietly whispers lies about who you are and what you're capable of. Not really in obvious ways, really in subtle ways. The kind of ways that don't stop you, but keep you from becoming everything you were created to be. So let me break this down for you in a way that's real and practical. Now, there are 4 things I think most men carry around, whether they admit it or not. 1, unresolved decisions. You made a call. Maybe it was right. Maybe it was wrong. But you keep replaying it. What if I would have stayed? What if I would have gone? What if I would have said yes? What if I would have said no? You revisit it more than you admit. And every time you do, it pulls you backward. 2, hidden shame. Things you hope nobody ever finds out. Moments you're not proud of. Decisions that don't align with who you are today. Thank God we didn't have mobile phones back in the day. So what do? Well, you bury these things, don't you? You compartmentalize them and you tell yourself, that's in the past. But here's the truth. What's buried alive is still alive. And it shows up in your reactions, in your relationships, and how you lead. 3, false identity. This is one of the most dangerous. You take your worst moment and you make it your label. I'm the guy who messed that up. I'm the guy who walked away. I'm the guy who failed. No, you're not. That's something that you did. It's not who you are, but when you carry it long enough, it really starts to feel like the truth. Are you that guy? 4, unfinished emotional business. Now, this is one most men never deal with. You never went back internally or processed what happened. You never sat with it. You never learned from it. You never allowed God into it. You just moved on. And because of that, it never gets resolved. Now, here's the lie that most men believe: if I just keep moving forward, it'll go away. Newsflash, no, it won't. It gets buried under activity, under achievement, under distraction, but it doesn't disappear. It just waits until things slow down, until life transitions, until a moment like 3 o'clock in the morning when everything is quiet and then it bubbles back up. Have you ever experienced that? And when it does, most men do one of two things. They either suppress it again or they let it overwhelm them. But what if there's another way? And now let me give you something that changed how I see this. God doesn't bring things to the surface to shame you. He brings them to the surface to heal you. Let that land. Let that sink in for a second. Because the very thing you've been avoiding might be the exact thing God wants to use to free you. So scripture tells us that light exposes darkness, not to condemn it, but to remove its power. Because what stays hidden stays in control. Hear that again. What stays hidden stays in control. So this first week here, as I go through this little series, this isn't about fixing anything. We're not jumping to solutions. We're not skipping steps. This is about one thing, and it's critically important to moving on in your life. Awareness. Awareness. You cannot release what you simply refuse to acknowledge. So I'm not going to challenge you, not lightly, directly. I should say, I'm going to challenge you, not lightly, but directly. How about that? I want you to sit with this and answer it honestly. Not quickly, not at the surface level. I want you to think about this honestly. What moment from your past still carries weight? You're going to hear my story at the end of April. Okay? It doesn't carry weight anymore. In fact, there's a lot of redemption involved in it. Can't wait to tell you that full story. What decision do you replay more than you admit? Where are you pretending it doesn't matter when deep down you know it does? Don't brush past that. Don't rush to the next thing. That right there, that's the starting point. This is where you need to get to. You need to ask yourself these questions. What moment from your past still carries weight? What decisions do you replay more than you admit? Where are you pretending it doesn't matter when deep down you know it does? You got to start with these, because here's the truth. You're not weak for carrying something. In fact, you're human. But you are responsible. You are responsible for the outcome, positive and or negative, for deciding how long you want to keep carrying it. And let me say this clearly. You don't have to carry it forever, because that's not strength. That's avoidance dressed up as endurance. Good golly, you don't want to carry that, keep carrying that stuff around. Real strength is not the willingness real strength is the willingness to face it, to look at it without running, to learn from it, and eventually release it. Now, I've spent the last 30 years building a life, growing, learning, becoming a better man. But now, as I prepare to step into a new chapter with my lovely bride, that old weight, it surfaced again. Not to pull me back, but to be dealt with the right way this time. And maybe that's where you are right now. Not at the beginning, not broken, but in transition. A moment where something old is coming up because it's time to finally let it go. So here's your assignment this week. Yes, you get an assignment. And yeah, I'm calling it an assignment because if you're serious about growth, and why wouldn't you be? You don't just listen, you act, you take action. That's the kind of man you are, right? Just take 10 to 15 minutes, no distractions, no phone, no noise, and write this down. What is it? What, when did it happen? What have I been telling myself about it? How has it shaped me? Be real. No filters, no pretending. Write down, what is it that's holding you back? When did it happen? And what have I been telling myself about it? And how has it shaped me? Because next week you want to answer those questions because next week we're going to go deeper. We're going to talk about the lie that keeps you stuck. The story you've been telling yourself about your past that feels true, but it isn't. And until you break that story, you will never be free from it. So for now, don't fix it, don't solve it, just acknowledge it. Because what you're carrying was never meant to stay with you this long. Capiche? How about that? You don't want to be carrying around that weight. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's True Man podcast. It's so much fun. What you can't see on camera here is we're working on filling up boxes so we can hit the road at the end of the month. And you're along for the ride. You're along for the journey. You always have been. You know, a good majority, well over 200 of these podcasts have been recorded right here in Georgia as part of my journey. But, you know, the journey continues and there's newness in the future. And can't wait to have you along for the ride to hear all about it. But we don't want you to carry that weight. If you have any questions about this, certainly reach out to me at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. And again, you can always hop on my calendar on my website, truemanlifecoaching.com. But for today, I'm going to go ahead and keep packing boxes. And we'll talk to you next week as we carry on this journey towards my story at the end of the month. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave me a great review on your favorite podcast channel. For today, I want you to go out, stop carrying that weight, and make this your very best day ever. God bless you, and thank you for listening.